Hello and welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Patreon-sponsored review time again, and it's a lot. Not in terms of the actual comic, but the backstory of what this is. Let's talk about Miracleman, aka Marvelman, aka Captain Marvel. In the early 1940s, Detective Comics alleged that Fawcett Publications was infringing on the copyright of Superman with the Billy Batson Captain Marvel. The lawsuit was quite frankly nonsense when you look at the two characters side by side, and especially as some of the powers that they said Captain Marvel was stealing were ones that Superman had stolen, like being able to fly. But hey, when has sense ever stopped a lawsuit? And it's a lawsuit that dragged. It took 7 years, 1941 to 1948, before it finally went to trial, to the point where Detective Comics became national publications during that time. The results of the trial were kinda weird. Due to some legal issues, Fawcett technically won the case, but the trial judge still declared that Captain Marvel was an illegal copy of Superman. They appealed the case, and the appeals court did change some of the verdicts, saying Captain Marvel himself was not a ripoff, but some aspects were, and they'd have to either do a retrial or appeal to the Supreme Court for a final decision. Bear in mind that by this point, 10 years had passed since the initial cease and desist concerning the two companies, and it was the 1950s now, when superhero comics were falling out of favor with the public. Rather than try to keep wasting money on something that wasn't going to be that much more profitable for them anyway, Fawcett settled with national publications, one of the caveats being that they'd cease publishing Captain Marvel and his related characters. This brings us over to the UK and the publisher Len Miller and his company L. Miller & Son Limited. Miller was having success doing reprints of Captain Marvel, but the end of new Captain Marvel stories meant the end of those reprints. As such, he went to the UK creator Mick Anglo to either find a way to continue the book or replace it with something else. And thus Anglo created Marvelman, who was Captain Marvel, but revised a bit. Instead of a young boy getting his powers from a wizard, a young reporter named Mickey Moran got his superpowers from an astrophysicist. Instead of yelling Shazam, he yells Kimota, aka Dracula spelled backwards. Well, okay, it's Atomic spelled backwards and with a K, but that just makes me think of that Atomic Mouse character we once looked at in the first Christmas Quickies video. Marvelman was a success, producing spin-offs like the sidekick Kid Marvelman, Marvelman Family, etc. The book eventually ended with changes in British law allowing more comics to be imported from the USA, and Marvelman couldn't compete with them. Cut to 20 years later, and the release of a British anthology comic called Warrior.
You can feel it, dude! You can feel it!
The editor and publisher of the book, Des Skin, wanted to revive Marvelman in the book, figuring that they might get some additional sales with an established character, and he tapped Alan Moore, who was also writing V for Vendetta in the anthology, to do the revival. Shock of all shocks, Alan Moore delivered a darker, more cynical view of superheroes in his revival, and it was also very popular. In turn, this also eventually led to financial and legal disputes, with Alan Moore, with Mick Anglo, and with Marvel Comics, who objected to the character name of Marvelman. The Marvelman stuff was discontinued, but eventually licensed off to Eclipse Comics, who reprinted the Warrior material and renamed the character as Miracleman to end any more potential legal issues with the name. But in a twist of bitter irony, much like how DC eventually found its way into ownership of Billy Batson and That Good Captain, Marvel eventually would get their hands on the rights to Miracleman. There's a long series of other legal issues from the 80s into the 2020s relating to this character. Really, this guy should have just been called Lawsuit Man, because it's just one thing after another of who owned it, who had the rights for reprints and new stories, creators like Neil Gaiman coming back to finish their own work on the character, Marvel inexplicably deciding they wanted to bring Marvelman into the main Marvel universe for whatever reason. It's just a lot! And all of this stemming back to DC being pissy about another superhero being similar to Superman if you squint hard enough. But let's dial the clock back to 2010, shortly after Marvel announced that they had purchased the rights to Marvelman. They launched the miniseries Marvelman Family's Finest, which reprinted a bunch of old Marvelman stories. So let's dig into the first issue and see some of them for ourselves.
Atop the fourth wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. What's with these awkward subjects? What's all this art so rubbish? To anyone who's had a bad comic published?
a disclaimer or two. First of all, I've never actually read any of the Marvelman or Miracle Man stuff until now. I knew of several of the plot details revolving around it, and I know a lot of the details of the Alan Moore stuff, but this is my first foray into it. Amusingly though, none of you have to know about it. The first issue of Marvelman Family's Finest reprints several Gold or Silver Age stories. I admit I'm not sure how to qualify the period for a series like this. The naming convention of different comic eras is based on American comics, plus the creation of these characters teeters on the edge of the Gold and Silver Age anyway. But still, the other thing to note here is that these comics were originally published in black and white, so that's what we've got in the first issue. The cover is pretty nice, an original artsy kind of image showing Marvelman, the left side with Ben Day dots, the right with some kind of painted particle dots, but each eventually swirling into clouds up top. Also, the moon. His throne. We open with our first story, Marvelman and the Acid Vapor. Well, they appear to be in space, so that takes care of that, I guess. A crack in the universe reveals the head of our villain, Gargunza.
Huck, huck, I'm here again, folks. A big headache for that blue baboon. That big blue goon, Marvelman!
Given the color emphasis, Marvelman is either the Blue Meanie or a member of Blue Man Group. Or he's Blue Leader from the Star Wars comic last time. And we can see that the moon has a big hole right through the center of it. Okay, Chairface, I think things might have gotten a little out of hand. Holy Mac! Holy moon! My God! What did they do to Mac tonight? Once more, Marvelman finds himself at grips with that evil genius, Gargunza. I don't know, he can't be that smart if he decided to keep the name Gargunza. We see that Gargonzola here is studying the effects of certain acids on rocks.
Heck, heck, this time I'm gonna do great things. I'll be paid millions for my invention. All I have to do is invent it.
Gargunza has a bright future as a Silicon Valley tech bro. He monologues to himself that his goal is to remove mountains.
Mountains are a curse to mankind in most cases.
Not to William Shatner.
He wants to make love to the mountain.
They get covered in snow, which melts and the water rushes down, flooding towns and villages. They cause clouds of vapor to rise and pour down rain.
Of course! Don't you know anything about science?
Amusingly, he does have a point with his next sentence, that removing mountains means bigger areas for construction and agriculture, which is a thing we do already with deforesting and creation of grazing lands. It's just I think he may be overselling the menace to mankind that mountains present. After a successful test of his rock-destroying acid that destroys limestone, granite, sandstone, and chalk, he decides he needs to pick a full mountain for a field test. Fortunately, he has a big book with the word Atlas on it. Unfortunately, that's just a very comprehensive biography of Charles Atlas. He locates a small mountain in the Western States, which honestly looks more like a hill, but what do I know, and proceeds to climb to its summit. He also carries this huge-ass canister the whole way, and isn't out of breath by the time he reaches it. So, hey, at least the guy's keeping in shape during his mad science. He releases the acid vapor and climbs back down, the material dissolving the mountain within an hour. Unfortunately, despite the mountain being destroyed, the vapor keeps going, descending down farther and farther.
Yipes! It's reached the molten areas below the surface. Wow! I've ruined the world!
Gonna have to be very careful about how I market this.
Ooh! Exfoliant for the planet.
As molten rock and flames start bursting from the hole he made, Gargunza makes a hasty retreat.
The world is doomed, but that means I'll perish with it. That's bad!
There is logic in what he says.
He decides he needs Marvelman to solve this crisis. The telephone rings in the editor's office of the Daily Bugle. Marvelman? Who gives a crap about him? Now if you got pictures of Spider-Man, then we'll talk. What? Some scientist has released a vapor that's eaten into the Earth's surface and released the Earth's molten core?
Repeat what you say to provide exposition?
Man, the Earth must be smaller than I thought it was if he's already reached the Earth's core after dissolving the mountain. He hangs up when the editor asks who it is. Said editor thinks it's probably a hoax, but they need to look into it anyway. He summons Mickey Moran and says to get Marvelman to investigate. Don't know if the editor knows he's Marvelman or if he just thinks Mickey has his phone number or something. He transforms into Marvelman and flies off to the still burning hole. Holy macaroni! Feels like that should be Holy Marvelroni. If there's some sort of vapor eating into the Earth, the first thing to do is to trace it and get rid of it.
Your logic is correct.
I'm curious how heavy this vapor supposedly is, since you'd think it'd otherwise be rising or spreading out rather than falling deeper into the Earth. Anyway, Marvelman flies in a circle fast enough to create a whirlwind that siphons the vapor, lava, smoke, and dust into space. That's fast, but the huge crater is still there.
Wow! What a hole!
He figures the hole needs to be plugged. Well, I guess there are enough meteorites out here in space to use to fill up that crater. It's a good thing the meteorite sales truck was early today. The plan works. Well, that's that. The landscape doesn't look very pretty now, but at least the danger is over. Hello, Bob Ross? I need some happy little trees here, stat! Marvelman quickly deduces that it was Gargunza who did this, and apparently knows where he's staying.
Always glad to see you, old pal. Do come in and sit down.
Right, and we can chat about your latest evil escapade. You scamp! Put on a pot of coffee and we'll talk about you almost destroying the Earth. Gargunza accidentally reveals that he knows about the acid vapor and consequently that it was him. Marvelman does something here. It seems to indicate that he punches him, even though the sound effect is a slam and his fist travels downwards, yet Gargunza moves up and to the right. Either way, Gargunza, as far as I know, doesn't have superpowers, so this seems a bit excessive. Later, Mickey looks into the night sky and spots that the moon has a big-ass hole in it.
Holy macaroni!
Somehow, the vapor is still active in space.
There's no steam in a vacuum.
And thus Marvelman flies up to plug the hole in the moon and lead the vapor, somehow, into the sun. That's dumped the vapor into the sun, where it'll be consumed without ill effects. The next morning, the Earth finds itself in an endless night because the vapor ended up consuming the sun. It shows how careless scientific experiments can endanger the world. Hear you loud and clear, Marvelman. Throw all scientists into the sun because they may try to melt mountains and instead blow up the Earth. You may not be Captain Marvel, but you truly have the wisdom of Solomon. Let's move on to the second story. The young Marvelman meets young Nasty Man. They formed a band the likes of which had never been seen, and they called themselves Tenacious D. In all seriousness, man, these logos kinda suck. Marvelman I'm okay with, the double M is unusual, but not totally ugly. But having both the hero and villain here specifically call themselves young like that and include it in their name... Now, young Marvelman is not actually the past version of Marvelman, the Superboy to his Superman, as it were, but rather a spin-off sidekick character like Captain Marvel Jr. But, that's why it doesn't quite work. Calling yourself young Marvelman implies you're the younger version of him, versus Junior, which is more like a son, which admittedly Freddie Freeman is not the son of Billy Batson, but you get my point. And even then, he doesn't have CM Jr. on his chest. Anyway, let's get to the story itself. On the far distant planet of Victo, a youth named Pontag lounges idly while other youths train for the forthcoming Victon Games. Soon, all of them would be involved in a steroid abuse scandal. Like a turn at throwing the discus? He would not. Too energetic for Pontag. And how? Young lazy man. I apparently wasn't too far off with the steroid joke as Pontag pulls out a potion. I'll show them. I'll try this potion the Hermit Nasty Man gave me. I know this should be obvious, but any kids out there watching, do not take potions given to you by people openly named Nasty Man. And thus he takes the potion and proclaims Nasty Man's name, which transforms him. Aha! I, Pontag, am now Nasty Man! Hello, Miss Jackson! Since he has superpowers and is an asshole, Nasty Man quickly gets to work beating up the athletes. You didn't think Pontag could throw the discus, but I'll go one better. I'll throw the discus and the discus throwers! Yet he still only gets the bronze, go figure. He proceeds to not only beat up the athletes, but the coach as well. On top of that, he goes wild and starts destroying the stadium they were practicing in. Some of the athletes want to rush him all at once. Come any near and I'll bounce this column off your heads. Don't you realize I am the young Nasty Man? Yeah, but you bought your verification mark. He apparently is on a rampage for a while until he comes across an old wise man. They say you're the wisest man on Victo. Guess you aren't wise to this arm lock, though.
Are you crazy? Is that your problem?
The wise man informs him that there's a boy stronger than him, young Marvelman. Pissed off at the idea that anyone could be as powerful as him, he flies to Earth to confront him. Young Marvelman,
Bah! I'll make hamburger of him.
Just add that to our list of things that Victo has on it. Human-looking aliens, discus throwers, speedos, and hamburgers. We cut to Balahu City, USA, a planned community, where a policeman asks Dickie Dauntless, a part of the Transatlantic Messenger Service, and our young Marvelman, to quickly try to get the police chief to come to police headquarters because the phone lines are busy. Dickie accomplishes this, the chief giving him a ride back into town on the way. Young Nasty Man soon appears in front of them.
Holy dabs! A jaywalker! I can't miss him! 30 points, Dickie!
Also, holy dabs? Is that what happens when a priest is dabbing? Anyway, yeah, young Nasty Man quickly tosses the car onto its side without a second thought. While the police chief radios this in, specifically mentioning that they need to locate young Marvelman to help them out, Dickie quickly changes into young Marvelman. Within like 3 feet of the chief. You'd think he'd notice, what with that mushroom cloud right there. Flying into town, young Marvelman sees a trail of destruction caused by young Nasty Man until he finds the asshole practicing throwing knives at a woman against a wall. Our hero quickly pulls him away and he retaliates by throwing a knife at his chest. It goes about as well as you'd expect, landing young Nasty Man a punch in the face. He tells the woman to get to safety. If you meet a doc along the way, send him along. He'll be needed pretty soon. Not for the fight though, I've just been having this weird rash on my arm lately. After knocking young Nasty Man down, Doc Malone arrives. Apparently someone young Marvelman knows already. Doc examines the unconscious Nasty Man.
This guy is a drug taker, taking an overdose. Look, this file has fallen from his pocket.
Wait a second, this is garlic powder.
As I thought. Nyctoborgonic phrenoherpescular sodium cycrate. Fortunately, I have the antidote here.
Oh yeah, all you need is some cesium francholithic mixialabidium rixie-dixie-doxydexydroxide. But indeed, he has an antidote for this drug overdose and injects him with it. With no real transition, young Nasty Man is awake again and runs off, deciding to return to Victo, only to find his superpowers have left him. He tries to get airborne by leaping off a bridge, but young Marvelman saves him and just keeps him in the water until the cops can arrest him. The story ending with the police chief talking to Dickie about how young Marvelman solved all this in 2 hours. And now Pontag is stranded on an alien planet where no doubt the government will take him and dissect him when they realize he's an alien. Happy ending all around! Next up is a 4-page short story introducing the other member of the Marvelman family, Kid Marvelman. And yep, his costume is also kind of dumb with the KM on the front. What's he supposed to do when he becomes an adult? I'm betting he becomes a normal, well-adjusted person who doesn't go on any murder sprees. Wouldn't you agree, Alan Moore?
Johnny Bates is a new member of the Marvelman family. He has been appointed by Marvelman himself to help in the great fight against evil, injustice, and inhumanity. Still, he hasn't been put on the company healthcare plan yet.
We begin with Johnny playing tag with some friends from the tenement building he lives in when a couple of bullies spot them. However, the bullies go a step further, not just beating up the kids, but wrecking some food carts in the area.
Then Patrolman Kelly arrives.
Hello, what is this? Looks like a riot! Apropos of nothing, you guys ever notice that time is a flat circle?
Boy, hack and slack!
Okay, goofier catchphrase. Buy hack and slack or holy macaroni.
You make the call.
Patrolman Kelly spots the tenement kids and assumes they're responsible for the overturned carts, letting the bullies get away. One wonders why the adults we see in this panel aren't stepping in to correct this, but I suppose it's possible they assume the bullies are from the same group. Johnny, pissed at the injustice right in front of him, decides to intervene, transforming into Kid Marvelman. It's time he was taught not to act from prejudice, but from humanity and justice. And he pushes the cop's hat down over his eyes. Well, justice is supposed to be blind, so I guess that does fit. Nearby, a criminal named Benny Karka spotted what happened and gets an idea to use the kids as decoys. A few days later, he gives the kids a bunch of rotten fruit and claims that Patrolman Kelly is a friend of his and he wants to play a joke on him. Said joke is throwing the rotten fruit at him. Good joke, man. The kids are morons and fall for this, pelting Kelly with the fruit and then running off. distracting him while he breaks into a warehouse and steals presumably money or something, it doesn't say. What's funny is that this doesn't actually work. Kelly soon returns to the warehouse and spots Benny in the act and realizes he must have put the kids up to this. Still, Kelly has a glass jaw, so Benny takes him out with one punch. Johnny tells the other kids they were idiots to believe the crook and quickly becomes Kid Marvelman, the other kids apparently knowing his secret identity. And you know what? Good for them. It's kind of refreshing that Johnny has a group of friends he trusts with this and can help him. And indeed they do, holding down Benny so Kid Marvelman can beat him up. Kelly regains consciousness and apologizes for what happened.
You kids sure turned up trumps. I'll remember that.
Thanks, officer. Also, please remember, boys will be boys. Boys will be assholes and morons. Got it. The next story has the full cast.
Marvelman family and the Giant Marrow. The Marvel family learns about bone marrow transplants for giants. When the king of Vegetable Land became annoyed with the antics of two villagers, the resultant trouble needed the combined efforts of the Marvelman family to clear up the threatened catastrophe.
What kind of a king of Vegetable Land are you if you need to recruit outside citizenry to deal with your internal problems? Next election, I'm voting for Anton York. Mickey Moran, who is apparently the copy boy at the Daily Bugle, which is baffling to me then, that he's sent to go do reporter things, has been sent to the annual agricultural show in the village of Hogsworthy with the paper's agricultural correspondent. The two watch the marrow growing contest. I'll get comfortable if all you're gonna do is watch plants grow. This might just be a British thing or a Linkara's an idiot thing, because I have never heard of a vegetable actually known as a marrow. It is a real vegetable, it's just I had never heard of it until now. The agricultural correspondent explains to Mickey how there are two neighbors in the contest with an age-old rivalry, Enoch Egot and Uriah Rake. The two are called in to examine Enoch's vegetables, when all of a sudden, Mickey gets hit with something in the back of his head. Wow, what on earth was that?
It's a gourd, bitch.
We soon see that it was Uriah, yelling that he won't let Enoch sabotage his marrow. Soon the two neighbors are attacking each other with gardening equipment, only broken up by Mickey becoming Marvelman. Presumably he ran off to do it in secret before returning, not that we're shown that, and physically separating them. However, the feud continues over the next day, and once more, Marvelman has to try to stop them from killing each other in a store.
You keep out of our business! Yeah, you keep out of this, blue boy! You're an outsider! That's right, let's throw the big guy out!
Nothing brings assholes together better than hating an outgroup.
Meanwhile, these events are being followed with keen interest in a strange land. A very strange land. The land of the King of the Vegetables. It is only his land, though, because who gives a crap about the other vegetable people?
I'm tired of these puny mortals trying to grow giant vegetables and squabbling about it.
Call us puny all you want, dude, but you're the one who ends up on my pizza.
Men of Vegetable Land, speed the word to Earth and inject all plants so that they grow to gigantic proportions. Humanity argues too much about the size of their vegetables. Let's stop them by making them even bigger!
Magnificent bastard, I read your book!
Soon we see Dickie Dauntless as young Marvelman having to rescue a family whose home got upended by a giant vegetable. After that, Johnny Bates almost gets a concussion from giant peaches falling off a tree. Wait a second, I thought that guy was the king of vegetables! What authority has he over fruit? As Kid Marvelman, he quickly deals with the giant acorns and peaches before they fall and hit anyone else. In Hogsworthy, chasms open up under the ground as giant roots spread through it, forcing Marvelman to rescue some people in a truck. The Marvelman family quickly unites and compares notes, doing everything they can to mitigate the damage. What can we do with these masses of vegetation?
Dump it in the sea. Screw practical uses for this oversized food, let's make it the fish's problem instead.
Soon, Marvelman discovers a vegetable person helping the spread of the giant plants. It tries to attack him with a carrot sword, though I've got to imagine that wouldn't be effective even against someone without superpowers. And they follow the Vegetable Man as he flees back to his people. The army of Vegetable Men tries to fight the Marvelman family, but they have about as much effect as you'd think given, their onions with leaf arms and stuff. I think their bodies are literally potatoes. The king comes in and demands to know why the Marvel Men are interfering. Marvelman explaining that their actions are causing havoc. And King Crudite here does not give a crap about that. As such, our heroes decide to create an object lesson, grabbing a ton of rotting vegetables and dumping it into the guy's kingdom. Feels like this is the equivalent of catapulting corpses at your enemies.
The king begs for mercy, saying he didn't realize the harm they were doing. They agree to leave peacefully, and our heroes help rebuild Hogsworthy for the agricultural show. The neighbors begin bickering again, and Marvelman, sick of their nonsense, has Kid Marvelman grab a giant marrow from Vegetable Land and put their own to shame. Very droll, to think we were squabbling, and all the time Marvelman was growing a real beauty. Well, grab a pitchfork and we'll stab him instead! Our final tale is the first part of a serial. Marvelman and the Great Gargunza Mystery, Part 1. Gargunza is kidnapped. Whoa! Spoilers, comic! Gargunza, the money-mad scientist and enemy of Marvelman, has been released from prison on parole. Let's see, your acid vapor almost destroyed the Earth and cut a hole in the moon. But you have been on good behavior since you got here.
Money, money, money! I must have money! Tons of it! I must think of a way to make some!
Behind the scenes at Activision Blizzard. However, some goons come in and grab Gargunza, soon spiriting him away to another country, Boromania. Spiromania still has more prestige. Spiromania is running wild! Soon, Gargunza meets Relty, the dictator of Boromania. He and his ridiculous beard want to join forces with Gargunza to destroy Marvelman and take over the world, of course. You know, what's left of it after Gargunza invents a liquid that sets everything on fire or something. He agrees when offered unlimited money to accomplish this. Marvelman, meanwhile, reads about how Gargunza is missing after not appearing at his parole hearing, and thus heads to the guy's lab to investigate. There, he discovers a bunch of Boromanian coins on the ground. Deciding to look into it, Marvelman heads to Relty, who I guess they know each other already, and asks about Gargunza. Being a politician, naturally, Relty's first response is to sick guards on our hero, who quickly get their asses kicked. And I guess that's all Marvelman decided to do, since he then just flies away, saying he's headed for Central Laboratories. Something big is going on, without a doubt. Then we've done it. We've finally invented the first hemorrhoid cream you can swallow. And so our comic ends with Gargunza proclaiming to some other scientists that he has made the perfect weapon. Also, that he once caught a fish this big. This comic is fine, though a bit goofy even by Golden Age standards. But only in the sense that it feels like ludicrous things happen to such absurd extremes that it seems like Marvelman should be questioning it more, like, wow, there are vegetable people? I should have a bigger reaction to this. Instead, it's more, wow, those vegetable people are being dicks. Let's stop them. But otherwise, the stories are just fun. Having never read any Marvelman before this, I can't speak with absolute certainty about where Captain Marvel begins and Marvelman ends, though I'd be shocked if Gargunza wasn't Dr. Savannah. The stories contain big threats, but our heroes continually rise to the occasion to show off how good they are. Young Marvelman's story is a bit iffier than the others, only that some doctor, possibly a recurring character, I don't know, comes out of nowhere to resolve the battle between him and Nasty Man by curing him of space steroids. The artwork is a bit iffy at times, mostly related to their body proportions, but otherwise these are great examples of black and white stories. The contrast working very well, and everything is clear and clean so that you don't need color to understand what's happening. Though admittedly, when everyone keeps drawing attention to Marvelman being blue, it gets kind of weird that we can't see that for ourselves. Overall, a decent collection of stories. Next time, we may have seen Batman take on xenomorphs, but what about Superman? We'll find out in the first book of Superman/Aliens.
That comic
What is this weapon that evil Gargunza has invented?
A lawsuit. Seems to be the thing it always comes back to with Marvelman. Hello, my friends. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications on new video releases. If you'd like to support future videos, you can check out my Patreon or purchase a t-shirt via Teespring or Shark Robot. Thanks for watching!